Okay, so here is a graph of a function. So this is going to be f of x for us. Just a standard axis. You can see it's labeled. Each of these boxes is just going to be 1 unit. So this is just example number 1. What we have, you can kind of see it starts back here at like -2 in the x's, goes up, comes down, flattens out, and then keeps going, right? So our arrow means this is sort of continuing off. We assume doing the same thing. It's just going to sort of stay flat and be horizontal and go for forever. So what are we trying to find from this graph? Well, the first thing we want is the domain of this function. So the idea is we're trying to look at the graph, right? We don't necessarily have individual x coordinates. We're trying to look at the graph and sort of pull all this information off of it. So the domain is going to be all of the different x values that this graph is covering. You could almost think of it as like if somebody was sort of, shining a light from up here, right, down onto the function. It would be any of the x values that the function casts a shadow over, right? So if I start labeling some of these coordinates, right, this would be like -2, +1. If we go up, this like peak value would be like, right, x is +1, the y value is 4, right? Corner point here, this would be like x is +3, the y value is 2. This would be like, right, +5 and the y value is 2. So the x values, where we're defined, we're essentially moving from left to right, and we're just sort of saying where does the function start and like how far does it go? Does it have any gaps that we need to sort of jump over? In this case, everything is connected. There's no gaps, there's no jumps. So we're just going to start back here, right, at x value -2. So the furthest to the left this function goes is -2. This is a filled in circle, right? So just like with the interval notation we were talking about a few minutes ago, right, if it's an open circle, right, if it's not filled in, that means we go towards that point but we don't technically touch it. This is filled in, so we just hit -2 and we'll use our bracket. So from there, we're just sort of moving forward. We're covering all these different x values, right? The graph goes up, the graph comes down. And for each of these points, I could label a different x value, an x coordinate, and they'd all be covered up. So there's no gaps in the function. This is just moving essentially forever from left to right, starting at -2. And for us, we're going to assume going all the way out to infinity.